Hello, my name is Donny McNichol of Team Animation, and I'd like to talk to you about organisational culture. In particular, the organisational culture that exists within project-based organisations. I'm going to introduce a simple 4-quadrant model that identifies different types of culture and then builds on it and talks about how you can use that insight. So we developed the project culture matrix as part of work we did on Project Leadership 3rd edition book by Gower, and the model was developed to be very specifically project focused. So there are two axes, which is around the level of centralization and the level of collaboration, low and high. And we thought those were really good axes. We looked at various culture models, but none of them quite fitted the projects world that we work in. So we wanted to develop our own model that we could use with clients and organizations and talk to them about and help them in the conversations. So the quadrants are, if you look at an organization that's got a high level of centralization and a low level of collaboration, that's an organization that's, say, process rules. So they may have very defined structures and hierarchy for decision making, but there's low cross-functional working or organizational networking opportunities or facilities. So I should say the level of centralization is bringing together the decision making, and collaboration doesn't mean to say it's not a nice place and people aren't collaborating individually, but it's that kind of central collaboration and that it's not made easy across the organization. So that's one, and there are 4 quadrants. So there's process rules, top right, then is community rules, bottom left individual rules, and then bottom right is relationship rule. And we used the rules in that we thought that was a nice simple way of describing what what kind of way of working typically rules. So if that's the 4 different quadrants, you can stop and have the video at this point and possibly have a look at this in some more detail. So these are 4 different quadrants that you can have depending on what you believe the level of centralization collaboration is. You may want to reflect on it now about your organisation, where it would sit. So let's take as an example, if it was process rules, what kind of project leader or leadership thrives in this culture? Well, typically you'd be highly structured and organised, process driven, would be a project leader that would fit very well into it, recognises the governance and sponsorship are critical to success. They don't see networking and relationship building quite as important as formalised authority and so on. So that's a typical type of project leader that would fit into that. So you can imagine if you're not that type of project leader and you're working in a process rules type of culture, you may find that quite challenging. Or again, if you have a high level of emotional intelligence, you may think, I now identify that I'm working in a different culture. I need to modify and adapt my approach to that. So we've identified that for all 4 different types of culture here, what the typical project leader would be in each one of those. And again, you can stop the video and have a look at those. The key thing at this point is to reflect on where the culture you fit in, and have a read about the typical project leader that fits into that, and think, are you that leader? Does that help to explain possibly why you are highly effective, maybe not quite as effective as you could be? Of course, this culture may not just be your own organisation. It may be the client organisation. It may be a partnership. It may be an alliance that you're working in, so you have to go and spend most of your time in an alliance partner. So it's their culture that you're thinking about, not your own organisation's culture. It's the one that you're typically working on. And you can even use it in comparing cultures. I've just popped in there, if you have watched any of the videos that describe the I'm a diagnostic, which identifies people individual communication engagement style, you may be interested to know that the 4 colours map onto this very well. So the high green, high blue, high red and yellow map to each of those 4 different quadrants. So the community rules would be a strong alignment to high blue, the process rules to high green, the individual rules to the high red, and the relationship rules to the high yellow. So if you've done your I'm a diagnostic, then you could have a look at this and actually say that's where I would typically sit within which type of culture I would fit into most easily and be most comfortable in. And it may give you a point of reference if you've got some challenges at the moment. This is an example of how the model's been used. We had the pleasure of helping a major consultancy in the UK set up its project leadership forum, and we came in London and Glasgow to kick it off with their own client community, and they brought together large numbers of their clients, and we kicked off and we used this model, and it was fascinating because the dots on this visual represent where they thought their culture was, and that created a fantastic conversation about what was the implication on their project delivery of that particular culture. And there was some real great conversations took place because people were getting an insight saying this maybe helps to explain why the way we tend to deliver projects. So the decision making in projects is done in this way rather than that. The way portfolio management works may be very different from one quadrant to the next. And it was also very interesting asking people, if that was the culture where they were now, where would you like it to be? Not everyone, but a fair number of people like the idea of the community rules or the relationship rules. So it's the high level of collaboration. And as we know, a lot of people nowadays now want to work in communities where there's high levels of collaboration. And that's one other example where we used it. Nice simple example. You've got the axes here, but we worked with a marketing organization recently in putting in place a new way of working for the organization, a projects-based approach, and we used the culture matrix to map where they were now and where they wanted to move. It's not some precise model, but it was very good when we worked with the board of that division to talk about where they were currently and being realistic about how they could adapt and modify their culture to meet the objectives that they had set at the beginning of that development project. So I hope that that was of interest to you. Some details here of the book if you want to find out a little bit more. Otherwise, I hope you found that of interest and value, and thank you for watching the video.